Welcome back to the Vanessa G Fitcast. I'm Vanessa Pozos, and here with me, as always, is my co-host and husband, Omar Pozos. I was about to ask how you're doing, but gotta switch it up.
I know, change it up a little bit on me.
What song is stuck in your head these days?
These days, I feel like, and you literally said this to me, but like my head sometimes is like a human jukebox.
It is literally a jukebox.
Like sometimes I'll wake up and I'll just start randomly singing the national anthem. Which is really weird. But anyways, what was the Taylor Swift song that we were listening to? What is it called? Opalite or whatever.
I would not call myself a Swiftie. You guys can hate me for that, but that song is catchy.
That song is catchy.
It is stuck
catchy.
in my head.
Yeah,
this is like maybe for some people unpopular opinion, but I think OG early. Younger Taylor Swift was her peak years.
Like
you can cancel me for that.
Like high school days.
I liked young T Swift with
the country T Swift,
the cute like romancy high schooly songs. And don't get me wrong, over there she's had plenty of like they get stuck in your head type of songs. Yeah. But I wouldn't say I'm a Swiftie. Yeah,
but anyways, that's what's been stuck. What about you?
Same thing. That was gonna be my answer.
You can't say the same one.
If I was already prepared to say that answer. But anyway, we're here to actually talk about not Taylor Swift things. I wanted to I kind of teased this on podcasts not too long ago I was like, eventually I'm going to do a podcast episode on this, but I've been doing a little bit of kind of working on some health journey with myself.
I feel like this is where people are like, what is Vanessa up to again?
There's always something. I'm always doing something. And the reality is, if I'm being honest, it's because I am at this point, basically I would say I'm like an optimizer when it comes to my health. I'm very happy with where my health is at, where my body is at. I do here and there still have like ongoing different symptoms because my body is, probably like if I was my own client, I would say I'm on the complex side of things. My body has had many issues over the years that is long-standing. So there's always new things that I'm diving into. And part of it is also the fact that I also like to test and try different things, try out different things that I'm learning or different lab tests I've heard about to ultimately, I like to be able to coach clients from also a place of personal experience to say, hey, like I would recommend this or I wouldn't recommend this because here was my experience as well as experience of using this with other clients. So
now from being a husband perspective, I guess being your husband, I feel like you try a couple things and then I'm like, oh, let me try it. And then now I'm like doing like MRT tests and fasts and
you're
all
like
sorts of
always
parasite cleanses.
Like about a year behind me in my health journey where it's like whatever I'm doing, he's always like, oh, I wouldn't do that. And then like a year later,
never do that. And I'm like, okay, I'll try it. Yeah.
I think that's like a viral reel that's been going around on Instagram of like, my wife is on a healing journey, so now I'm on a healing journey, and it's just like all the things that the wife does, the husband ends up doing eventually.
It's kind of the thing where it's like you buy the groceries, so I'm like, well, if you're doing it, I might as well do it too. Yeah, just easy.
But for this episode, so I've teased a little bit of the MRT test. I've talked about it a little bit on Instagram. As I initially was doing this lab test and as I initially got into this protocol, I talked about it a little bit, but I want to dive a little bit deeper into that today. Really just talk about the MRT test, what I learned, and I want to get into a little bit of a topic around this, that is food sensitivity testing. We've talked about this actually on a podcast episode a while back. That was actually the first time I talked about MRT testing on the podcast.
What does MRT stand for?
So, and it's actually wrong of me to say MRT testing because the T is test, but it's Mediator Release Test.
Got it.
So ultimately what it is it's like a food sensitivity test, except it's not like the majority of food sensitivity tests on the market, which are really just expensive food logs. Majority of the food sensitivity tests, like vast majority, I would say I have yet to ever have a client who comes to me who says, I have already had a food sensitivity test done. When you take a look at it, I've looked at it and thought, this is useful. Realistically, food sensitivity tests, they're primarily all IgG testing. So what it's looking at is basically what you have had recently that created this response in your body that is not necessarily actually a problem. So the difference with, just keeping it very simple, the difference between MRT tests, so mediator release testing, versus IgG testing is the mediator release test. It's looking at the mediator. It's looking at it's what we would call endpoint testing. It is actually looking at cytokines and different immune system mediators that get released when you have this food. So putting an analogy to this, because I know this topic is going to be very
talk
complex.
To me in analogy terms.
Think of it like if you were a firefighter, you might get lots of different calls of different things, but not all of them are actually fires. So the classic food sensitivity test is asking the firefighter of all the different things that they've seen on the job that weren't necessarily problems. So they'd be like, oh yeah, I saw that, I saw that, I saw that. And so it's giving you a list of the things that they've seen. It's giving you a list of the foods that your body has been exposed to. The MRT testing is actually, hey, this is where there were fires. This is where some of the fires were smaller. Some of the fires were really big and a really big issue. This is where we're putting out fires. These are actually what's causing fires in the body.
Got it. Okay. Interesting. It's almost like going back to the fire department analogy. It's like the typical, what did you say it was? IgG? Mm-hmm. Okay. Those types of tests, it's almost like giving somebody like a log of all the calls that they had versus the MRT is more like, hey, here was a situation where it was actually a fire and here's why it happened, kind of thing.
Yeah, but very, very, very simple. IgG is looking at exposure. It's looking at the IgG antibodies that came up to show that you were exposed to this food. It's not necessarily actually a true problem, and it's been mistaken. These tests are actually misleading because they've been mistakenly trying to decipher and say these foods are a problem for you when the reality is, like that's the common thing that people say, they're just expensive food logs. It's just going to pull up the foods that you have eaten frequently and in excess for the most part. Okay. Not actually foods that are necessarily a problem for you. It's not actually showing a true reaction. So you could be, you could get a food sensitivity test because, a lot of people will say, oh, I've been having gut issues. I've been not feeling good. My stomach's been hurting. You know what? I feel like I need to get a food sensitivity test and see what foods are causing issues for me so I just know what I need to cut out. Common thought, right? But that's misthinking because these food sensitivity tests are just going to show you the foods that you've been eating. So then you get this test report back and you're like, oh my gosh, I've been eating eggs and it's telling me the eggs are really bad for me. It's telling me the eggs my body's sensitive to that. Or I've been eating this and it's telling me my body's sensitive to that. Yeah, it's telling you your body's sensitive to it because you've been eating it. So you have these antibodies from it. Mediator Release Testing, MRT, is actually showing what is creating an inflammatory response. It's actually looking at the immune system response from foods. So that won't lead to you unnecessarily cutting things out. It'll actually say what foods are maybe contributing to the problem so that we can remove them and we can lower your overall inflammatory response via the immune system. Let the immune system calm down. That's endpoint testing. So that's where, kind of going back to my story with this, for those who have been around for a while, a little bit of recap for you, for those who are newer, like I have had years of gut issues. And so when I started my functional health healing journey a few years ago, it was a long road of working a lot of different systems in my body. And, there's an order of operations for things. We always want to kind of start with a little bit of process of elimination. We got to make sure certain things are in a good spot before you go deeper into other parts of the body. And so a big part of that is we got to do a lot of gut healing work before we can get into other systems of the body. However, for some people like myself, we can do a lot of gut healing, but then there still continues to be certain areas that need to be worked on. So, for example, I had a lot of immune system being overactive, essentially, for me. And the immune system, what a lot of people don't realize, is about 75% of your immune system is actually housed in the gut, the immune cells. So that's where we can do a lot of gut healing work. But yet, if your immune system is still flaring up, you might still show signs of gut issues over time. So that's for myself. I periodically here and there would still have little bits of gut issues that pop up. And this would also end up often turning into other types of issues that we can point back to inflammation. So one example being, I still, for a long time, had struggled with my recovery from workouts. Firsthand, I have been for really the last couple of years slowly adding back in workouts after I removed it for a period of time. And I really was pretty much just averaging about 2 workouts a week. And that was about my max. Like I say average 2 workouts a week, meaning that there were some weeks I did 0, some weeks I did 3, but averaging at 2. And if I tried to, do 3 for multiple weeks in a row, or I tried to do more than 3, I would end up oftentimes with like joint issues, with really bad fatigue. I'd feel bloated. I might have like a little bit of flare up of, maybe some, my gut not feeling super great. I might just feel really brain foggy. Like the symptoms could vary, but it was very clear that my body still has this buildup of inflammation where then certain stressors workouts being a stressor would then kind of like tip the bucket of inflammation over to where, think of it as like you have this bucket of water and like you might not notice that the bucket's almost full, but then you fill it over and suddenly now it's overflowing. You're like, oh crap, this bucket's overflowing. That's kind of like the inflammation in my body. I'd be fine with like a 3/4 of a bucket full of inflammation, but you just add that just one thing that tips the bucket over and now it's a problem.
Can I ask, because I know obviously for us, and we've talked about how a lot of times hormones start in the gut, and you've talked about GI maps and all that stuff. And I know you mentioned here, you're like, I have already done a lot of gut healing work. So for the people that are kind of listening out there, Ness, I'm curious, regardless, if somebody's having GI related symptoms and or a lot of help or support needed when it comes to hormones, you would still probably start with a something like a GI map. And then it sounds like kind of what you were saying is when that is in a good place and things have been optimized and you're still having recurring symptoms, then the MRT would be the next best step for something like that, right?
I won't say like 100% MRT is the next best step.
Okay.
It
Depends
varies.
on the person.
100% varies. And I want to be clear too, MRT, it's a little bit of an expensive lab test, and it's one that we won't use lightly because we always try and be very conscientious with clients of, most people are not on this unlimited budget of just like, I will do any and all labs, any and all supplements, all the things, right? Like we had to be conscientious of that. So this is one I would bring down the line if I'm like really need to just bring as much inflammation down as possible. And I'm like, with your body, there's other things we're going to do, but we need to know exactly which foods we need to remove for this period of time. That's when it becomes really, really helpful.
Yeah. So it sounds like for you, it's like, hey, I've already done the gut healing work. I've already learned to manage my stress. I'm already eating well. It's just like, this is the next step to really optimize things.
Yeah. And to be clear, it could happen coinciding with doing the gut healing work. It depends on the person. It depends on what they want to do. But, sometimes we'll have clients that come in and they're like, I will do anything and everything to feel better. I'd be like, let's throw this in, but I'm not going to do this in place of a GI map. I need to do the GI map to see clearly what's going on in your gut and make sure we're targeting your gut appropriately. And then this is like it aids in the healing work because as we're healing your gut, now we can not take a general food approach of in general, these are inflammatory foods, these are anti-inflammatory foods. Let's lean towards anti-inflammatory. Let's eliminate inflammatory. That's what we're going to do for most people. But yet where MRT gets more specific is there might be things on that list that are like, oh, this is a food that I'm actually leaning more towards because it's traditionally anti-inflammatory. Yet for my specific body, it's actually adding to inflammation right now. Yeah. Is that going to be like the one key that unlocks to make me feel 100% better? Maybe not, but it probably is contributing to the overall, like we said, it's the overall bucket of inflammation. Like that's adding water to the bucket. So that's where we want to look at it that way. So with my journey, it was more of a, I've done multiple GI maps, I've done multiple Dutch tests, I've done lots of different types of lab tests over the years, and this was one I hadn't done yet. And I've done a lot of healing work, a lot of protocols, and my body realistically in overall a great place. A lot of people, if they were in my position, they'd probably be like, I'm good with these symptoms here and there. Like I'm fine with never working out more than 2 days a week. I'm fine with every once in a while still having a little bit of gut feeling a little funky. I'm fine with every once in a while having a little bit of weird fatigue or maybe like a pop-up of PMS and like just like little things every once in a while. Like I'm fine. Like that's good enough for me. Most people would probably say that. Like I said, I'm more of an optimizer where I live in this world of functional health. I want to be an example to my clients, my people who look to me. I want to make sure I am crossing all my T's, dotting all my I's to make sure I can do everything I can and learn everything I can through experimentation with my body and optimizing to be a leader in this space. And so part of that comes with, okay, if I'm having these different symptoms, I could say, yeah, I'm good enough. I'm just going to continue on like this. Or I can say, hey, why don't I dig deeper here and see what else I can do? And maybe I'll learn something along the way that'll actually make me a better coach for my clients. And so that's where MRT came in. Over the summer, you might recall it was, I think June was when I had a really bad gut flare up. There was just like that random, and it just seemed like it was out of nowhere of here. I'm eating these foods that traditionally felt really good for my body. I know how to eat for the most part if my gut's feeling off. And so I was leaning towards that. This was not a time of the month where I would expect to feel off. And I just like had this one Friday where I was like, gosh, I'm just like not feeling great. My gut's feeling like my stomach's kind of hurting. I'm feeling like almost like trapped gas. It just feels kind of like painful. And then Saturday it got worse. And you might remember like that Saturday evening, I was like, I can't eat. I feel awful. And I did eat dinner because I'm not one to skip a meal. And we went for a walk. And like we usually do like a little short evening loop. And do you remember like I got like halfway around the loop and I was like bent over. I was like, I don't know if I'm gonna make it home. I don't
know if I remember that. I just remember like like you were saying, like the recovery has just been not in a great spot where you're just like, I don't know what's wrong with my body now. And we had talked about, I'm like, maybe we need to do further testing, but I know you've been working hard at this. So I know how much this has been impacting you. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's where, so it was that instance in June, which you're like, I don't even remember that. Cause like,
that one time in June, I'm like, yeah,
He's like, I don't keep
honey.
a log of your symptoms. So yeah, it was that time that I was like, all right, there's something else we need to do here. So that's where in July I did the MRT test, and I kind of essentially started that protocol in August. So when I say started that protocol, the good thing about MRT is that it's not necessarily saying that we're going to be using this to add expensive supplements, which might be, from some labs, it might be indicating, okay, here's some areas where we need to add supplementation. The good thing about MRT, despite the lab test being expensive, is that the protocol is not expensive because it's just helping you decide which foods to eat when. And so that's, I honestly, I just pulled up my lab tests to even remind myself here.
Share a little bit, if you're open to it, about some of the foods that are relatively common in your diet that you had to eliminate, because I'll be honest with you, and I know you're like, I would never do this, and maybe I'm a year behind you, but I'm like, looking at what you had to do, because I know we've gone through a couple of trips, and we hosted people for like a little Halloween get together, and kudos to you, because I'm like, that is not fun, and I don't think it's very sustainable for a long term, but you've stuck with it, and I'm so proud of you. But yeah, if you're open to sharing a little bit of what all you had to do, I think the listeners would really appreciate that.
Yeah. So to give you an idea of this lab test, like if you're familiar with generally food sensitivity testing, the outline, like how it looks is very similar, where it's these lists of many foods. And this one is a very exhaustive list. It includes different chemicals and compounds. So, everything from, it's like caffeine is separate from coffee, is separate from, so many different aspects. Like there are different types of teas. Like it's super exhaustive, super extensive. And then everything is rated on a scale of reaction level. And so there's the actual numeric value to the reaction, as well as it's color coded between green, yellow, and red, as you can presume, red being the highest level reaction, green being the least reactive. However, what we need to understand is that anything, even if it's green, it's still giving a reaction. And so when we look at it in totality, look at the total number, this is the total amount of foods creating a reaction in my body. So while some people might look at it, and even if you were to do this, it would send you like initial kind of recommendations based on your results. It's going to basically just say, cut out the reds, cut out the yellow, and, do that for like a really short period of time, and then kind of just like add everything back in. That's not how I would go about that. It's not how I did go about it. It's not how I would have a client go about it. I actually look at this and I don't want to give specific numbers because it would depend on the person, depend on the case. But for me, I actually removed up to a certain number on the green. So for me, my foods that I was starting with were anything that were below that certain number reaction level in the green. Yeah. So for the first month, all I ate was what was showing as basically like I'm okay because it's a very low reaction. Yeah, the least reactive. So that's it. It was kind of a small list.
Yeah.
I remember we hosted some of our team for a retreat literally a couple weeks into doing this. And two of our coaches, Ray and Mackenzie, they were hanging out at our house because they got in early. And I had this like posted up on my fridge with like the what I could eat highlighted. And I was telling them about it. And I was like, yeah, here's my list. And I was like, yeah, the ones I highlighted is what I can't eat. And Mackenzie was like, wait, the ones that are highlighted is what you can eat? And she was like, that's not very many foods.
Yeah. But I think what's important to kind of go back a little bit on this is to your point, like, this is really optimizing things. Mm-hmm. And, again, whether it's stress from work, that's going to add things to the stress bucket or whatever you want to call it. And then you mentioned, just regular inflammation or training and recovery and all that stuff. And again, what you're trying to do really, and the reason why you were so aggressive, I think, with this, and correct me if I'm wrong, is again, we're just trying to lower inflammation as much as possible. And we do that by choosing the least reactive foods and then kind of moving from there, right?
Yeah, exactly. Because the reality is your body isn't just randomly reacting to everything you eat. It's not just this at random, and it's not the same as everybody else. Your body is going to be reacting because of something specifically that's happening in your body. And it's going to be because of ultimately your gut barrier, your immune system, your digestion are under stress. And so when, for a lot of people, it can be like the gut lining is compromised. So again, this is also where adding GI maps are very, very helpful, because we can look at what is your SIG-A, what are your secretory IgA on your gut, on your GI map, which is actually showing your immune, essentially like your overall immune system abilities. So we want to simplify it very, very much there. That's what SIG-A is showing. So we can look at that in conjunction with things. We can look at, is there dysbiosis going on in your body? Adding into this, I also was doing parasite cleanses, because I actually, when we went to Mexico back in February for a friend's wedding, pretty positive I came back with a parasite, because it was like up until then felt great with my gut, and after that I was having a lot of gut flare-ups. So it's like that's a little bit more of the what's really causing the reaction. But while we're working on that, in order for the parasite cleanse and the work that I'm doing to bring stress down and really aiding the overall kind of root causes of things. So for me, root causes being stress and being things going on in my gut, like parasites. In order to actually effectively eradicate those issues, doing that deeper healing work, I needed to give my body enough of a break to essentially like turn off the fires in order to actually do the healing. So it's like I'm trying to like remodel a house while there's still a fire in the house. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So for people like me who their bodies are a little bit more sensitive and have a lot of things going on, have years of deep issues, have a lot of symptoms, this can be a really great test to get you feeling better a lot faster. Again, I always like to be honest. This test is a little bit more on the expensive side, and it's not going to be the one and only thing that's going to get you healed. It's not going to be, this is the root cause of your issues. This will aid the healing process while we address the root cause of your issues specifically. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So, I think that's what I want people to understand from this, is that MRT is a tool. It's not a lifestyle. Like, I've been adding these foods back in over time because I've been giving my body a sufficient amount of time at rest from having these things to bring inflammation down, let that fire cool off, to where now with the healing work, now I can start to tolerate foods again. Those same foods that were creating reactions, I should be able to tolerate them again over time. The higher the reaction level, the longer I need to keep it out to be able to tolerate it again. But over time, I'll be able to tolerate it.
And I think that's important to note too, because I think people are just like, well, this elimination diet or this AIP diet or this IgG test is like, well, I can't have X, Y, Z food.
It's overwhelming when you just think of it of like, is this forever?
Right. That's kind of my thing. And I think nobody ever talks about like, okay, well, once you do the proper healing work, if it is done correctly, you can start to add some of these things, of course, sometimes in moderation or whatever that might look like. But I think that's where a lot of people are just like, well, what happens after I eliminate the foods? You
have to reintroduce very strategically as you've done the healing work. And then if you have done the healing work effectively, and then you strategically reintroduce these foods, now you can have these foods again without them flaring up your body. The thing I also want to add to this is like, I feel like I'm underselling this hardcore, because I'm like, I want people to understand the realities too of why this isn't something I would, for a lot of people, jump right into saying, hey, let's do MRT. I want people to understand though the benefits and why I've done this as well, of like a lot of good things from this protocol. Yes, it's been hard, but I do genuinely believe that typically good things come on the other side of things being hard. Rarely is something easy and then you get really great things from it. And in this process, I feel like this has been really, really great for changing a little bit of like my habits and behaviors with food. I didn't realize how much I was actually stuck in a pattern of eating something sweet every single night until doing this. And really, I was very sad, I'm going to admit. Chocolate was flaring me up quite a bit. And I think many people know I'm like a chocolate every day type of person. Typically, I would always have like a little piece of chocolate every night. So when I was like, oh man, I got to cut that out for several months, I was like, that sucks. But there was a good bit of fruits that I could have. And since I did this in summertime, thankfully, these fruits are also in season. And it got me eating fruits that I have not had in years. I even have been eating some fruits I've never had. Apriums. Didn't even know that was
I didn't even know that was a fruit, to be honest with you. I'm like,
a lot of people don't.
Aprium?
It's a plum and an apricot bred together, and plums and apricots were ones that were not flaring me. So you can bet I was having their babies.
You can bet.
And they're delicious. I did not know that. And now I love apriums. Grapes was something I've always liked, but I just didn't really think to eat that often. Now it's like I love to eat my grapes. And truly, I know I've said this before. I know people say this often, but I think it's important to emphasize your taste buds do change over time. And you think that you need to have something. When you eliminate it for a little while and you have a good reason to eliminate it, I think that's important to specify with that of if we're just eliminating things unnecessarily or out of fear, that is not healthy. And that is not something I recommend or ever ask clients to do. But if we have a reason to eliminate something temporarily, and for me, it's a really good reason when I can say, man, I haven't been feeling good, and I can see on this lab that this thing is contributing to me not feeling good. Yeah, that gives me a lot of really good reason to not want it. So yeah, it's still hard to go to a social setting where that food is available and to say, oh no, I'm actually not going to have any of that. Like I don't want to minimize the fact that that's still challenging, but it's a lot easier when I know, well, if I don't have that, I'm going to feel a lot better faster.
Yeah.
And if I do have that, I'm going to probably feel crappy. And so like I'm perfectly fine with not having it right now, knowing it's not forever. And I will be able to have that again in a few months. And it actually feels empowering of like, oh, I'm making this choice, not because I have to, but because I want to.
Yeah. I mean, I was just thinking, we even went to an engagement party. Remember Jackson's birthday and Lexi's engagement party? And they had a whole like cheese spread. And Vanessa was just like, I'm not having it. I was like, okay, I am. So anyways, I know it's been challenging, but I'm one, very proud of you for sticking to it. And then two, I've seen just how much better you've been feeling, which is awesome. So
my energy has been fantastic the last couple months now since doing this. So I started this like end of July, early August, and it's now late October. So it's, I've added a good bit of foods back in, but truly, and what's interesting too, I think people might be interested in understanding this. Like you would think if you first remove these foods, you would just like immediately feel better. So I actually had detox reactions from this. And that's something that you need to understand when your immune system is flaring up from something. And so your immune system is flaring up from a food, pulling that food temporarily, your immune system has been flaring up. Now you're going to be actually allowing your body to detox out this buildup of inflammation, and you will feel a little bit sick for a couple of days because you're actually getting all of that out. That was a good sign though for me, because it's like, oh, actually this actually works. This is encouraging of like something's happening here. And literally by the next week, I was like, wow, I feel really good. And it's continued to build on that. My cycles have been really great. My last cycle is truly the best I've felt in probably over a year. If I didn't closely track my cycle and know where I'm at with things, I wouldn't know my period was about to start, because I felt great all the way through my luteal phase, through my period. I have not had any gut issues. And I've been doing, some parasite cleanses as well. So of course that's been doing the healing work deeper on the gut side, but like just how I've been feeling. Oh, and I've added a little bit more intensity in my workouts, and I've been recovering great. So like all signs point to this has been really great for my body, and it's something I am definitely a fan of. And I will likely, knowing that my body does have a history of some extensive, deeper gut issues and immune system issues, this is something I probably would even maybe over the years continue to do more MRT tests, because of course your body's going to change. And as you continue to eat a lot of the same things, that's when you start to build reactions to them. So this is also a reminder to vary your diet. Don't eat the same things forever and ever. That's something I used to say when I was a macro coach, of like, just eat the same thing every single day, same breakfast every day, same lunch.
Look at you now doing
and
MRT
now I'm like,
test.
don't do that, because you're going to build up a immune system reaction to it if you have gut issues like I do. So yeah, I think it's a wonderful tool. I think it's really great to see what's just like silently keeping your immune system in that flare up mode and fight mode. But at the end of the day, it's not going to fix things. You still have to do the work. You still have to actually do the deeper healing work. A lot of that is not fun things like stress management and actually doing things to really help your body heal from the inside out. Yeah. So, I mean, summing it all up, I mean, MRT, it's not for everyone. It is an investment. But I think if you've had chronic gut issues, chronic skin issues, chronic just signs of inflammation that can show up in a lot of different ways, especially despite eating healthy. Like if you're someone who for example, on my test, something that's a really common health food is turmeric. That was flaring me up quite a bit, and that would be surprising. Like I was leaning a lot to turmeric tea because it's a very anti-inflammatory food. Salmon was flaring me up, and that's a very healthy, very great food that I recommend people eat. For me specifically, creating an immune system reaction. So if you're in that place, you're like, I eat really healthy, I'm not seeing a breakthrough with my body, this can be a great place to start. If you've done like every elimination diet under the sun, you're still stuck, I think MRT can give you a lot of clarity, a lot of direction, can be really, really helpful. But for everybody else, if you have not done all those things yet, you need to start with the foundations. You need to start with getting everything in a good place, and you need to really make sure we actually do the repair work in your gut first, or at least alongside doing MRT. So I hope this was helpful. I hope this was enlightening. If it's something you want to learn more about, of course, just shoot me a message on Instagram. Happy to chat with you and see if this is something that would be good for you in your situation, or chat with you about what lab testing I would recommend for you, or we can get you booked for a consultation with our team and see what might work for you, what might be best for you, and go from there. But thank you guys so much for listening. As always, you've been getting lots of really good messages, seeing you guys tag me in your Instagram story. So thank you for doing that. Thank you for spreading the word. We'll be back next week with another great episode.
Bye, everybody.